The silver orb rotated slowly in Tari Kiran's trembling hands, its surface glowing faintly blue in the dim emergency lighting. Outside, thunder rolled across Athora's ravaged landscape, though she knew it wasn't natural thunder. The Horde Dominion warships had been pounding the planet's surface for nearly 3 days now, methodically destroying everything that remained of Itheran civilization. "Are you certain this is our only option?" asked Naren, her second-in-command. The amphibious Itheran's normally lustrous blue skin had dulled to a sickly gray, partly from exhaustion and partly from the dust that coated everything in their underground command center. "Die nodded grimly. Our regular communications array was destroyed in the first wave. The backup systems have been jammed. This is all we have left." She held up the photon beacon, an ancient piece of emergency equipment that hadn't been used in over 2 centuries. The device violated at least 6 interplanetary communication protocols, but laws seemed meaningless now as their world burned above them. "The Council might not even respond," Naren said, his gill flaps pulsing with anxiety. "We're just a farming colony on the edge of nowhere. Someone might hear us," Tari replied, more to convince herself than him. "Someone has to." Another explosion rocked the bunker, closer this time. Dust rained from the ceiling, coating Tari's dark uniform. She was the highest-ranking security officer left alive, responsible for the safety of nearly 30,000 survivors. As a tall, lean woman with close-cropped black hair and eyes that had seen too much death in recent days, she carried that responsibility in the tight line of her jaw and the rigid set of her shoulders. Through the bunker's small observation port, she could see what remained of the once beautiful capital city of Larethel. The Itherans, peaceful agrarians who had developed one of the most sustainable food production systems in the galaxy, had never stood a chance against the Horde Dominion's battlecruisers. The Dominion had appeared without warning, their intentions clear: strip the planet of its resources and eliminate any resistance. The Itheran Defense Force, little more than a planetary police unit, had been overwhelmed within hours. Now, the remaining survivors huddled in a network of underground shelters, waiting for the inevitable. "How does it work?" Naren asked, eyeing the beacon with a mixture of hope and skepticism. "It broadcasts on all frequencies simultaneously, powerful enough to punch through any jamming field," Tari explained, activating the device. It hummed to life, the blue glow intensifying. "But it's like lighting a signal fire in the darkness. Anyone can see it. Friend or foe?" She hesitated, her finger hovering over the activation panel. Once triggered, the beacon would send their desperate plea across the galaxy, but it would also immediately reveal their location to the Horde fleet. Another explosion, this one close enough to send cracks spiderwebbing across one wall. They were running out of time. "Do it," Naren urged, his wide amphibian eyes reflecting the beacon's blue light. "We have nothing left to lose." Tari pressed her palm against the activation panel. The orb pulsed once, twice, then emitted a blinding flash that momentarily illuminated the entire command center. A wave of energy surged outward, invisible but powerful enough that Tari felt the hair on her arms stand on end. "Distress signal active," announced the device in a calm, synthetic voice, broadcasting on all emergency channels. The signal would travel faster than light, carried by quantum entanglement across vast distances. But Tari knew the bitter truth. Even if someone received their call, even if someone cared enough to respond, help would arrive too late for most of Athora. "Now we wait," she said quietly, placing the still glowing beacon in its cradle. "And hope." On the monitoring screens, she could see groups of survivors being herded toward the deeper shelters. Mothers clutching children with webbed fingers, elders moving as quickly as their frail bodies would allow, younger Itherans helping the injured. Their faces showed the same expression, terror mixed with the resignation of a people who understood they were witnessing the end of their world. A young communications officer burst into the command center, her uniform torn and smudged with dirt. "Security Chief, the Horde have deployed landing craft. Ground forces are moving toward the southern quadrant." Tari grabbed her sidearm, checking the charge. It was a standard-issue stunner, practically useless against Horde battle armor. Organize everyone who can still fight. We need to buy time for the others to reach the inner chambers. As she moved toward the door, Naren caught her arm. The beacon. What if it only brings more enemies? Tari looked back at the glowing orb, a tiny point of hope in their darkening world. The distress. Signal has been sent, she said. Now we find out who's listening. The signal raced outward from Ithora, a desperate cry for help spreading across the stars like ripples in a cosmic pond. But who would answer? And would they arrive in time to find anything worth saving? Chancellor Rella's exoskeleton gleamed under the polished lights of the Galactic Council chamber. The massive insectoid Aryan shifted her weight, causing the ceremonial chain of office to clink softly against her carapace as she surveyed the assembled representatives. This emergency session of the Galactic Council is now in session, she announced, her translator converting the clicks and chirps of her native language into the standard galactic common. We face a matter requiring immediate attention. The Grand Chamber on Crownus Prime buzzed with activity. Over 300 species were represented here, from the feathered Helians, who perched on the upper tiers, to the silicon-based Geodan delegation, who preferred the cooler areas near the floor. The chamber itself was a marvel of engineering, designed to accommodate the environmental needs of vastly different life forms while facilitating communication among beings who sometimes had no physical features in common at all. The Council has received a Class 1 distress signal, Rella continued, her compound eyes sweeping the chamber. Source: the agricultural world of Ithora in the Outer Reach. Holographic displays activated around the chamber, showing the small blue-green planet and its current status. Red warning indicators flashed around the image. Preliminary analysis indicates the planet is under attack by forces bearing the signature of the Horde Dominion, reported Admiral Thex, the reptilian Crodan military liaison. His armored scales rasped against his uniform as he manipulated the display. The signal was transmitted via photon beacon technology, an extreme measure that violates Protocols 3, 7, and 12 of the Non-Escalation Treaty. A murmur ran through the chamber. Photon beacons were a last resort, used only in the most desperate situations. They broadcast with enough power to be detected anywhere in the galaxy, but also attracted attention from anyone monitoring communications. Using one was essentially announcing that you had nothing left to lose. "What is our response timeline?" asked the Hellion representative, her feathers ruffling with agitation. Admiral Thex's expression darkened. The nearest Council peacekeeping force is stationed at Vega Outpost. Estimated arrival time at Ithora, 72 standard hours. Another ripple of concern spread through the chamber. 72 hours was too long. If the Horde Dominion was truly attacking Ithora, there would be nothing left to save. "A move that we dispatch the rapid response team immediately," said the Mechari delegate, his metallic voice echoing from an environmental suit that housed his gaseous form. Chancellor Rella clicked her mandibles. "The rapid response team is currently engaged in the Zenith sector. Diverting them would leave 3 Council worlds vulnerable." "Ithora is a minor agricultural world," objected Councillor Draven of the Seratan Confederacy, his jeweled tentacles waving dismissively. "While regrettable, we cannot compromise the security of more developed systems for one small colony." More voices joined the debate, the chamber growing louder as opinions split. Some urged immediate action, others cautioned restraint. A few questioned whether the distress call might be a trap, designed to lure Council forces away from more valuable targets. Throughout the heated discussion, one figure remained silent. Ambassador Diane Reyes sat at the human delegation station, listening intently. Humans were relative newcomers to the Galactic Council, having achieved faster-than-light travel only 15 years earlier. Their quick technological advancement had earned them conditional membership, but they were still viewed with a mixture of curiosity and wariness by the older species. Reyes was a compact woman in her 50s, her silver-streaked black hair pulled back in a severe bun. Her dark blue uniform bore minimal decoration, in stark contrast to the elaborate regalia favored by many council representatives. While other delegates argued, she studied the data about Athora's situation with intense focus, occasionally tapping notes in her datapad. Finally, as the debate reached a crescendo, she activated her communication channel. "If I may address the council?" Her voice was calm, but carried an authority that momentarily quieted the chamber. Chancellor Rella inclined her massive head. "The council recognizes Ambassador Reyes of Earth." "Thank you, Chancellor." Reyes stood, her expression grave. "The data shows that Athora's population is primarily civilian, agricultural specialists, and their families. They have minimal defensive capabilities and pose no threat to the Horde Dominion. This appears to be a resource raid, pure and simple." She manipulated her console, bringing up new information on the holographic display. "Ithora may seem insignificant to some, but it produces 17 essential medicinal compounds found nowhere else in the galaxy. Its agri-scientists have developed cultivation methods that have prevented famines on a dozen worlds." Her dark eyes swept the chamber. "More importantly, they're members of this council. When they joined, they were promised protection. What message do we send to other worlds if we abandon them now?" A few representatives nodded in agreement, but Councillor Draven was unmoved. "Stirring words, Ambassador, but they do not change the strategic realities. We lack the resources to protect every minor world from every threat." "Then perhaps it's time we reconsidered our defensive priorities," Reyes replied, her tone sharpening. "Earth has proposed increased military cooperation for years, only to be rebuffed. Maybe this situation would demonstrate why such cooperation is necessary." Before anyone could respond, her datapad chimed with an urgent notification. She glanced down, read it quickly, then tapped a brief acknowledgement before returning her attention to the debate. "I propose a vote," Chancellor Rella announced, sensing the impasse. "Shall the Council commit resources to the defense of Ithora, potentially at the expense of other protected worlds?" The voting commenced, delegates registering their positions through their consoles. Ambassador Reyes voted in favor, but without apparent emotion. When the results appeared on the main display, she showed no surprise at the outcome. "The Council has decided," Chancellor Rella declared, "by a margin of 197 to 108, with 42 abstentions, we will acknowledge the distress signal from Ithora, but maintain our current force deployments. We will, however, dispatch an assessment team to document the situation for potential future action against the Horde Dominion." As the session adjourned, delegates began filing out of the chamber. Ambassador Reyes gathered her materials unhurriedly, her face unreadable. Only when approached by the Geodan representative did she speak again. "A disappointing outcome, Ambassador Reyes," the crystalline being said, its voice resonating from within its silicon form. "Your passion for Ithora's plight was commendable." "Thank you, Representatives YX," she replied evenly. "Sometimes the wheels of galactic bureaucracy turn too slowly for those caught in crisis." As the Geodan moved away, Reyes activated her secure communicator, ensuring it was shielded from surveillance. Her message was brief and encoded. "Earth Central, Situation Omega. Ithora. Green light authorized." She slipped the communicator into her pocket and walked calmly from the council chamber, leaving no indication of what she had just set in motion. Tari Kiran pressed her back against the wall of the maintenance tunnel, trying to control her breathing. The air was thick with dust and the acrid smell of burned circuitry. Somewhere above, heavy boots stomped across the rubble-strewn floor of what had once been Ithora's primary communication hub. The Horde ground forces had breached the outer layers of their underground complex 4 hours ago. Since then, it had been a fighting retreat, falling back from one defensive position to another, trying to buy time for civilians to reach the deepest emergency shelters. "How many clips do you have left?" whispered Kel, a young Ithran security officer whose left arm hung uselessly at his side, a nasty burn marking where a Horde energy weapon had grazed him. "Tari, check your weapon." "2. Maybe enough for 6 shots if I'm careful." The standard issue stunner had proven nearly useless against the Horde's battle armor, but at highest setting and point-blank range, it could sometimes overwhelm their shield generators. From her position, she could see through a crack in the wall into the adjacent corridor. 3 Horda soldiers were methodically checking rooms, their massive, insectoid forms encased in powered armor that made them look even more menacing. Each stood nearly 8 feet tall, with multiple armored limbs carrying an assortment of weapons. "Security Chief," came Naren's voice through her communicator, barely audible above the static. "We've sealed the inner sanctum. 217 civilians secured. Only 217 out of a colony of 30,000. Tari closed her eyes briefly, letting the magnitude of the loss wash over her before pushing it aside. There would be time for mourning later, if any of them survived. "Good work," she replied softly. "Hold position. We'll try to divert attention away from your location." A thunderous boom shook the entire structure, different from the targeted weapons fire they'd experienced so far. This was bigger, orbital bombardment. The Horda were growing impatient with the ground. Assault, and had decided to blast their way in. Dust and debris rained down as the ceiling creaked ominously. Tari grabbed Kel by his good arm. "Move! We need to get deeper." They scrambled through the maintenance tunnel just as another impact hit, this one close enough to collapse the section they had just vacated. The tunnel plunged into darkness as the emergency lighting failed. Tari activated the small light on her wrist communicator, revealing a passage choked with dust and debris. "This way," she coughed, helping Kel navigate around a fallen support beam. They emerged into a small monitoring station, its screens flickering with intermittent power. One display showed the planet's orbit, where the massive silhouettes of Horda warships hung like predatory insects against the stars. But something was happening. On the screen, new signals appeared, bright flashes of light erupting in the space around the Horda fleet. At first, Tari thought it might be some kind of weapon discharge or malfunction in the monitoring system. Then she realized new ships had arrived. "Is that the Council?" Kel asked, hope flaring in his voice. "Did they come for us after all?" Tari zoomed in on the new arrivals, but these weren't the familiar designs of Council peacekeepers. These ships were sleek and dark, moving with impossible speed as they darted between the much larger Horda vessels. Their hulls seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it, making them difficult to track even on the monitor. "I don't know who they are," she admitted, watching in amazement as one of the newcomers accelerated directly toward a Horda cruiser. The Horda vessel opened fire, energy beams lancing out, but somehow missing as the smaller ship seemed to predict and evade each attack with uncanny precision. The mysterious ship closed to point-blank range, then unleashed a barrage of its own. Brilliant blue energy pulses hammered the Horda cruiser's shields, which flared and then collapsed. The follow-up attack was surgical, targeting engines and weapon systems rather than attempting to destroy the vessel outright. Similar scenes played out across the orbital battlefield. The unknown force, though outnumbered, moved with coordination and technology that seemed to border on the impossible. Horda ships, accustomed to overwhelming their opponents with brute force, found themselves outmaneuvered at every turn. "Look," Kel pointed at another monitor, this one showing the surface near their position. Dozens of objects were descending through the atmosphere, drop pods of some kind, their heat shields glowing as they plunged toward the ground. Most were targeting areas where Horda ground forces had concentrated. "Are they reinforcements?" Kel asked, confused. "But who would?" The building shook again, but this time from a much closer impact. One of the pods had landed just outside their complex. Tari switched the monitor to an external camera, trying to get a visual. The pod had split open, revealing its contents. Soldiers in sleek black armor, moving with the same fluid efficiency as their ships. Their helmets completely obscured their features, offering no clue to what species might be inside. Each carried weapons unlike anything Tari had seen before, compact but obviously advanced. She watched, transfixed, as the black-armored soldiers engaged a group of Horda troops. The difference in fighting capability was immediately apparent. where the Horde relied on overwhelming firepower and heavy armor. These newcomers used speed, coordination, and precision. They flanked, they covered each other, they used the terrain to advantage. Textbook small unit tactics executed flawlessly. What should have been an even fight turned into a rout. Within minutes, the Horde soldiers were either disabled or in retreat, without a single casualty among the mysterious force. They're coming inside, Tari realized, watching as several of the soldiers approached the complex entrance. Kel, we need to. A thunderous crash interrupted her as a section of wall collapsed inward. Through the dust cloud, 3 Horde soldiers stumbled in, clearly fleeing something. They spotted Tari and Kel immediately, raising their weapons. Tari pushed Kel behind her and raised her own stunner, knowing it was futile. But before either side could fire, shadows moved in the breach behind the Horde. 3 precise energy pulses flashed through the dust, striking each Horde soldier in vulnerable joint sections of their armor. The massive aliens crashed to the floor, their armor systems failing. Tari kept her weapon raised as a figure in black armor stepped through the breach, weapon at the ready. For a long moment, they stared at each other across the debris-strewn room. Tari with her almost useless stunner, the unknown soldier with a weapon that had just disabled 3 Horde warriors in seconds. The soldier took in the situation, noting Tari's protective stance in front of the injured Kel. Then slowly and deliberately, they lowered their weapon and raised a hand in what was unmistakably a gesture of peace. Tari hesitated, then cautiously lowered her stunner. "Who are you?" she asked. The soldier reached up and touched the side of their helmet. With a soft hiss, the faceplate depolarized, becoming transparent, revealing a very human face beneath. Tari's eyes widened in shock. Humans were known in the galaxy, of course, but as newcomers, diplomats, traitors, not as warriors with technology that outclassed even the Horde Dominion. The human gave a small nod and spoke, their voice slightly distorted by the helmet speakers. "Earth Special Response Force. We received your distress call." A brief pause, then, "Sorry it took us a while to get here." In the skies above Ithora, what had begun as an unexpected skirmish had evolved into a full-scale space battle. The Horde Dominion, recovering from their initial surprise, had consolidated their remaining warships into a defensive formation. 14 battlecruisers arranged in a traditional Horde combat diamond, energy weapons charged and targeting systems locked on the mysterious newcomers. Dominion fleet drifted powerless among the stars. "How?" he demanded of no one in particular. "How is this possible?" On the surface of Ithora, a similar pattern was playing out. The human Special Response Force moved through the colony with methodical efficiency, neutralizing Horde ground troops through a combination of superior tactics and technology that seemed almost magical in its effectiveness. But what truly shocked the Ithorans was what came after the fighting. In the largest open area of the underground complex, human soldiers had established a field medical center. Portable equipment hummed as medical staff and specialized armor treated not only injured Ithorans, but also wounded Horde soldiers. Tari Kiran watched in amazement as a human medical officer, distinguishable by the red crosses emblazoned on her armor, carefully treated a young Ithoran child whose webbed hands had been burned during the initial attack. "The pain will subside soon," the medic was explaining gently to the frightened child. "This regenerative gel helps your skin heal itself faster. You're being very brave." Nearby, another medical team worked on a Horde soldier, their movements just as careful despite the alien being an enemy combatant minutes earlier. Captain Marcus Reed approached Tari, his helmet now removed to reveal a weathered human face with piercing blue eyes and close-cropped gray hair. He carried himself with the quiet confidence of someone accustomed to command. "Security Chief Kiran? Our engineers have restored power to the life support systems throughout the complex. We've also secured the perimeter. No more Horde forces will be getting through." Tari nodded, still trying to process everything that had happened in the last few hours. "Thank you, Captain. But I don't understand. How did you respond so quickly? And with such force? The Earth, I know, is a recent addition to the Council, with limited military capability beyond your home system. A smile flickered briefly across Reed's face. That's the official position, yes. He gestured for her to follow him to a quieter corner of the makeshift command center they had established. What I'm about to tell you isn't widely known in the Council, he said once they had privacy. Earth has maintained, let's call it a separate defense initiative alongside our public space program. After our own history of warfare, we developed technologies and strategies that the Council either hasn't pursued or has prohibited. But why keep it secret? Tari asked. The Council values transparency among its members. Initially, it was fear, Reed admitted. Humans entered a galactic community where many species have been spacefaring for millennia. We were concerned that revealing our true military capabilities might be seen as threatening, might even get us excluded from the Council altogether. He called up a holographic display showing the status of operations across Ithora. Later, once we understood the politics of the Council better, we realized something else. Many of the older species have grown complacent. The peacekeeping forces are undermanned, under-equipped, and spread too thin. So you established your own response force, Tari concluded. Reed nodded. We've positioned rapid deployment units near key sectors, particularly around worlds we thought might be vulnerable. When your distress call came through, our nearest unit was less than 6 hours away at maximum speed. Tari absorbed this information, trying to reconcile it with what she knew of humans as Council members. Always courteous, seemingly deferential to the older species, never pushing too hard on military matters. The Council doesn't know any of this, she stated rather than asked. Some suspect, Reed replied. But no, the full extent of our capabilities has been downplayed in official reports. Before they could continue, a communications officer approached. Captain, we're receiving multiple transmissions. The Galactic Council has detected our operation and is demanding information. And there's a priority message from Ambassador Reyes at Council headquarters. Reed sighed. It appears our secret is out. Chief Kieran, if you'll excuse me, I need to manage what's about to become a diplomatic incident. As he turned to leave, Tari caught his arm. Captain, thank you. Without your intervention, everyone on this planet would be dead by now. Reed's expression softened momentarily. That's why we're here, Chief. When we heard your call, there was never any question of whether we would respond. Across the galaxy on Cronus Prime, the Galactic Council chamber was in chaos. Emergency beacons had summoned representatives from their quarters in the middle of the night cycle, and many arrived disheveled and confused. The central holographic display showed real-time footage from Ithora, images of sleek black ships neutralizing the Horde fleet and armored soldiers securing the colony. Chancellorella struggled to maintain order as voices rose in alarm and confusion. Silence, she finally commanded, her translator amplifying her voice to a level that shocked the chamber in a momentary quiet. We will proceed with facts, not speculation. Admiral Thex, report what we know. The Croton military liaison stepped forward, looking distinctly uncomfortable. Approximately 8 standard hours ago, an unknown fleet engaged the Horde of forces at Ithora. Using technology beyond anything in our current registry, they disabled the entire Horde fleet and deployed ground forces that secured the colony within 2 hours. He manipulated the display, zooming in on images of the mysterious soldiers. We have now confirmed the identity of the intervening force. They are human military, operating under the designation Earth Special Response Force. A stunned silence fell over the chamber, quickly followed by an eruption of voices. Impossible. The humans don't have this kind of technology. This violates at least 17 Council protocols on military disclosure. Chancellorella raised her appendages for silence once more. We have established communication with the human forces at Ithora. Their commander has agreed to provide a preliminary report, but detailed explanations will apparently come from. She consulted her datapad, Earth Central Command. The holographic display shifted to show Captain Reed, still in his armor though with his helmet removed. Behind him, the bustle of the makeshift command center was visible. Greetings, Chancellorella and members of the Council. Reed began formally. I am Captain Marcus Reed of the Earth Special Response Force. We responded to the distress call from Ithora after detecting it via our monitoring stations. The situation has been stabilized. The Horde fleet has been neutralized, but not destroyed. Their ships retain life support, but lack offensive capabilities. Their ground forces have been similarly contained. By what authority did Earth launch this military operation without Council approval? Demanded Counselor Draven, his jeweled tentacles waving agitatedly. By the authority of Earth's Central Command, in accordance with our mutual defense agreements with Council Worlds, Reed replied evenly. When it became clear that conventional Council forces would not arrive in time to prevent the destruction of Ithora, we activated our contingency response. These contingency responses were never disclosed to the Council. Draven countered. I understand your concerns, Reed said diplomatically. However, I am not authorized to discuss policy matters. Ambassador Reyes will address those questions. My team's focus remains on securing Ithora and providing humanitarian assistance. As if on cue, the chamber doors opened to admit Ambassador Diane Reyes. She walked calmly to the central podium, her expression composed despite the tension crackling through the chamber. Chancellor, distinguished representatives, she began, her voice steady. I come before you today to address what I know are many questions about the events at Ithora. Questions, sputtered a Hellion representative, feathers bristling with indignation. Earth has concealed military capabilities that violate the technology disclosure accords. You've deployed weapons and ships that far exceed what you claim to possess when joining the Council. Reyes nodded, acknowledging the accusation without defensiveness. That is correct. Earth has maintained certain capabilities beyond what we have officially registered with the Council. The admission sent another wave of shocked murmurs through the chamber. Why? Asked Chancellor Rella directly. Initially, out of caution, Reyes explained. When humanity first encountered the galactic community, we were acutely aware of our status as newcomers to a society of species with millennia of interstellar experience. We feared that revealing the full extent of our military technology, developed during centuries of unfortunately frequent warfare on our homeworld, might be seen as threatening. She paused, looking around the chamber. Later, we maintained this separation for practical reasons. We observed that despite the Council's commitment to mutual defense, its actual response capabilities were often insufficient. The vote regarding Ithora proved this point. So you took matters into your own hands, Chancellor Rella stated. We established a network of rapid response forces positioned near vulnerable Council worlds, Reyes confirmed. Their standing orders are simple. Respond to legitimate distress calls when conventional Council forces cannot arrive in time. The Mechari delegate spoke up, his metallic voice contemplative. These forces, their technology is unlike anything we've seen. Those ships move in ways that should be impossible. Human military research took different paths than many Council species, Reyes explained. Were some focused on energy output or weapon yield. We concentrated on maneuverability, predictive systems, and non-lethal incapacitation. And you deployed these forces without Council authorization, Counselor Draven persisted. With respect, Counselor, Reyes countered. When this Council voted not to send help to Ithora, knowing that meant the death of its people, you surrendered the moral authority to question how they were saved. The chamber erupted again, some representatives objecting loudly to her characterization, others falling silent in apparent guilt or contemplation. Through the chaos, a new voice emerged, softer, yet somehow cutting through the din. The Council members turned to see an Itheran standing near the entrance, still wearing dust-covered clothes, his blue skin bearing visible injuries. He was supported by a human medical officer. If I may address the Council, he said, his translator working to convert his aquatic language. I am Naren, Assistant to Security Chief Kieran of Ithora. Chancellor Rella, sensing an opportunity to shift the focus from the uncomfortable accusations flying through the chamber, quickly recognized him. The Council acknowledges Representative Naren of Ithora. Please speak. Naren moved slowly to the central area, each step clearly painful. The human medic stayed close, monitoring his condition. "I have just arrived from Ithora via emergency transport," Naren said, his voice carrying the weariness of someone who had witnessed devastation. 3 days ago, my world was peaceful, a place where we grew food that fed billions across dozens of systems. Then the Horde came. They gave no warning, no demands. They simply began destroying everything. His gills fluttered with emotion as he continued. "We called for help. We used technology we knew was forbidden because we had no choice. And when this council received our plea, you voted to abandon us to our fate." The chamber had fallen completely silent now, every representative watching the injured Itheran with uncomfortable intensity. "I do not know the politics between humans and this council. I do not understand why they hid their strength. But I know this. While you debated, they acted. While you weighed strategic value, they valued lives." Naren's large eyes swept across the assembly. 230,000 of my people are alive today who would otherwise be dead. That number includes children, elders, our greatest scientists and artists. He straightened, wincing slightly. "If the humans violated your protocols, perhaps your protocols needed violating. If they kept secrets, perhaps they had reason. But they came when we called, and no one else did." With those words, Naren bowed slightly to the council, then turned and allowed the human medic to help him to a seat at the Itheran delegation station, which had been empty during the previous session. Chancellor Rella's compound eyes shifted as she processed this emotional testimony. The council acknowledges the situation of Ithora and the intervention of Earth forces. She turned toward Ambassador Reyes. "However, questions of protocol and transparency remain. The Council cannot function if its members conceal military capabilities that could destabilize galactic peace." "We agree," Reyes responded promptly, "which is why I am authorized to provide full technical specifications of all systems deployed at Ithora to the appropriate Council committees. Earth is prepared to integrate our Special Response Force into the Council's defense structure under joint oversight." She brought up a display of her own, showing a strategic map of Council space. "What we propose is not dominance, but partnership. Earth has developed certain technologies to high levels. Other species have different specialties. Together, we could create a defense network that truly protects all Council worlds, not just those deemed strategically valuable." General Talix of the Viridian Confederation, who had remained silent until now, leaned forward. "These ships of yours, they disabled the Horde fleet without destroying it." "How?" "Targeted electromagnetic pulse weapons," Reyes explained. "Designed to overload systems without causing catastrophic damage. We find that minimizing casualties, even enemy casualties, leads to more stable post-conflict situations." "And your ground forces," another representative inquired. "They move with such coordination. Is it some form of hive mind?" Reyes allowed herself a small smile. "Nothing so exotic. Simply extensive training, augmented armor, and tactical AI support systems. Our combat doctrine emphasizes precision over raw power. We would be pleased to share these approaches with Council forces." The chamber broke into smaller conversations, representatives conferring with their staffs or with neighboring delegations. The mood had shifted from outright hostility to a mix of suspicion, curiosity, and from some quarters, cautious optimism. "Chancellor," Rella consulted briefly with her senior advisors before addressing the chamber again. "The Council will need time to fully assess this situation. For now, we acknowledge the rescue of Ithora and thank Earth for its intervention. However, unorthodox the circumstances." She turned to Ambassador Reyes. "A special committee will be formed to review Earth's military capabilities and determine appropriate integration with Council defense protocols. Until then, we request that your Special Response Force remain at Ithora to oversee the transition and recovery." "Agreed," Reyes replied simply. As the emergency session adjourned, representatives clustered in groups, discussing the implications of what they had learned. Many approached the Itheran delegation, offering belated assistance now that the immediate crisis was past. Others sought out Ambassador Reyes, some with accusations, others with questions, and a few with quiet expressions of support. In one corner of the chamber, out of the main flow of traffic, Counselor Draven confronted Reyes directly. "This changes the balance of power in the council," he said, his jeweled tentacles signaling agitation. "Some will see it as a threat. Some already saw humans as a threat," Reyes replied calmly. "At least now it's in the open, where we can address it honestly. And if certain factions push for Earth's expulsion from the council due to these deceptions," Reyes met his compound eyes steadily, "then they should consider whether they prefer us inside the council, working together under agreed protocols, or outside it with no oversight at all." It wasn't a threat, merely a statement of reality. Draven's tentacles stilled as he considered this. "An interesting perspective, Ambassador. We will be watching Earth's next moves very carefully." "As you should," she replied. "Transparency works both ways." As Draven moved away, Reyes found herself approached by Naren, now looking slightly better after receiving medical attention. "Ambassador," he said softly, "my people wish to formally thank Earth for its intervention. Without your forces, Ithora would be lost." "No thanks are necessary," she assured him. "We responded as any ally should." Naren's expression shifted in what might have been an Itheran smile. "Perhaps, but you were the only ones who did." He offered her a small, ornate object, a water-filled crystal containing a bioluminescent Itheran plant. "This is our highest symbol of gratitude. It represents life, continuing even in darkness." Reyes accepted it with appropriate solemnity. Earth will always stand ready to help Ithora, both in crisis and in rebuilding. As she left the council chamber, Reyes's secure communicator chimed with an incoming message from Earth Central. The text was brief but significant. "Operation Transparency approved. Proceed with Phase 2. The real work, she knew, was just beginning. 2 weeks after the battle, Ithora was slowly coming back to life. Rubble was being cleared from the devastated settlements. Temporary structures housed displaced civilians while reconstruction teams, mostly Itheran but supplemented by specialists from Earth and several other council worlds, worked to restore essential infrastructure. In what had once been the central plaza of Larethel, now serving as a coordination hub for recovery efforts, Tari Kiran stood beside Captain Reed, reviewing progress reports on a holographic display. "The northern agricultural domes will be operational again within a week," she noted, pointing to the relevant section of the map. "The irrigation systems suffered minimal damage." "Good news," Reed agreed. "And the Horda? The last of their ground forces have been processed and transferred to council custody," Tari reported. "The disabled fleet has been towed to the neutral station at Proxima Deep for negotiation of terms." She deactivated the display and turned to face Reed directly. "Your people will be leaving soon." It wasn't a question, but Reed nodded anyway. "My orders came through this morning. The Special Response Force is being redeployed now that the immediate crisis is past. Council peacekeepers will arrive tomorrow to establish a permanent garrison. They're only coming because you proved Ithora was worth protecting," Tari observed with a touch of bitterness. "If you hadn't intervened, they would have written us off entirely." "Politics is catching up to reality," Reed said diplomatically. "Your representative at the council has become quite influential." Naren's testimony changed minds. Tari smiled at that. Naren had always been better with words than with weapons. His unexpected role as Ithora's voice in the council had revealed talents no one had suspected he possessed. "What happens now?" she asked. "With Earth in the council, I mean." Reed gazed out over the reconstruction efforts before answering. "Integration, supposedly. Earth will officially register our military capabilities. Joint training exercises are being planned. Technology sharing agreements are being drafted." "You don't sound convinced." "Old habits die hard," he admitted. "The council has operated according to certain assumptions for centuries. Finding out that humans have been holding cards close to our chest has created trust issues." A young Itheran child ran past them, chasing what appeared to be a small robotic toy, probably a gift from one of the Earth engineers. Despite everything, life was returning to Ithora's streets. Will it work? Tari asked. This new arrangement? Reed considered the question seriously. I think it has to. The galaxy is too dangerous for divided responses. The Horde were just testing boundaries. There are worse threats waiting out there. He nodded toward the sky. The Morali Empire has been expanding along the galactic rim. The Sark Collective has developed planet-killer technology. We need each other. Tari followed his gaze upward. For what it's worth, most Ithrans don't care about the politics. You came when we called. That's what matters to us. Reed's communicator chimed, and he checked it briefly. My shuttle leaves in an hour. There's one more thing I wanted to discuss with you. He led her to a quieter area where they wouldn't be overheard. Earth is establishing a permanent liaison office on Ithora. Small, discreet, but with direct communication capabilities to our response networks. The Council approved this? Tari asked, surprised. It's part of the new transparency, Reed replied with a slight smile. We're setting up similar offices on other border worlds. The Council knows about it. Mostly, he became more serious. We need someone local to head it. Someone who understands both Ithora and what we're trying to accomplish. Someone who's proven they can keep a cool head in a crisis. Tari realized what he was suggesting. Me? I'm just a security chief who held together a defense against impossible odds and saved hundreds of lives, Reed countered. The position carries diplomatic status and direct access to Earth Command. Consider it, at least. Before she could respond, Reed's second-in-command approached to remind him about their departure timeline. The captain nodded acknowledgement. I have to go, he told Tari. Whatever you decide, it's been an honor working with you, Chief Kieran. They clasped hands in the human manner, and Reed departed to oversee his unit's withdrawal. Tari remained, watching as Earth shuttles began lifting off from various points around the settlement. Within hours, all visible signs of their presence would be gone, leaving only the results of their intervention. A world saved, a people preserved, and a galactic political structure fundamentally altered. She touched the small communication device Reed had discreetly passed to her during their handshake. A direct line to Earth's response network, and a symbol of the new reality. 5 days later, in the restored council chamber on Cronus Prime, the previous one having been deemed inadequate for the expanded discussions now taking place. Representatives from over 300 worlds gathered for what many were calling the most significant session in council history. Chancellor Rella presided, but the chamber's configuration had been altered. Where once the oldest and most powerful species had dominated the central positions, the arrangement was now more equitable. The human delegation, previously relegated to a distant upper tier, now occupied a prominent place in the forum. This special session will now commence, Chancellor Rella announced. Our agenda is substantial, but our primary purpose is to formalize the new security arrangements following recent events. The holographic display activated, showing not only the council chamber, but live feeds from dozens of worlds, including Ithora, where reconstruction continued apace. Visible in the Ithran feed was Tari Kieran, now wearing the formal insignia of the planet's new diplomatic service. The first item, continued Rella, is the ratification of the Comprehensive Defense Protocol, establishing joint oversight of the integrated military forces, including Earth's special response units. General Marcus Hale, Earth's newly appointed military liaison, stood beside Ambassador Reyes. Unlike the ambassador's understated appearance, the general cut an imposing figure in his formal uniform, decorated with the insignia of multiple Earth conflicts. Distinguished representatives, Hale began, his deep voice carrying easily through the chamber. For over 2 centuries, humanity fought itself in conflicts that ranged from tribal disputes to global wars. We developed weapons that nearly destroyed our own world. We learned, through bitter experience, the cost of unrestrained military ambition. He activated a series of displays showing Earth military technology, the same technology that had so efficiently neutralized the Horde at Ithora. When we achieved faster-than-light travel and encountered the wider galactic community, we faced a choice: reveal everything and risk being seen as a threat, or conceal our capabilities and risk being underestimated. Neither option seemed ideal. Hale's expression remained professionally neutral, but his words carried conviction. We chose a middle path, officially registering capabilities that matched Council expectations while maintaining our more advanced systems in reserve, to be used only in genuine emergencies where lives hung in the balance. A convenient justification for deception, noted a Mechari representative. Perhaps, Hale acknowledged. But consider the alternative. Had we arrived in Council space with warships capable of neutralizing fleets, would we have been welcomed as partners or treated as potential conquerors? The question hung in the air, many representatives shifting uncomfortably as they considered it. Regardless, Hale continued, that era is now behind us. Earth fully commits to transparency in military capabilities and joint command structures for rapid response scenarios. What we ask in return is a genuine reform of Council defense priorities, one that values all member worlds equally, regardless of their economic or strategic importance. Chancellor Rella's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. A noble sentiment, General, but resources remain finite. How do you propose we accomplish this expanded protection? Ambassador Reyes stepped forward. With innovation rather than duplication, Chancellor, Earth doesn't suggest building more of the same defensive systems. We propose integrating what already exists more effectively. She brought up a new display showing a network of response hubs strategically positioned throughout Council space. Smaller, faster reaction forces positioned for rapid deployment. Shared technology that emphasizes efficiency over brute force. And most importantly, a command structure that can make decisions in minutes rather than days. The proposal sparked intense discussion throughout the chamber. Some delegates expressed skepticism about the practical implementation. Others raised concerns about command authority and sovereign rights. But unlike previous Council sessions, where debates could drag on inconclusively for days, this one had a palpable sense of purpose. On the feed from Ithora, Tari Kiran watched with a mixture of hope and lingering concern. The path forward seemed promising, but questions remained. Would this new cooperation last beyond the immediate crisis? Would older prejudices resurface once the shock of recent events faded? As if sensing her thoughts, Naren, now officially Ithora's council representative, addressed the chamber. My world stands as testimony to both failure and hope, he said, his translated voice clear despite the distance. We witnessed the failure of old systems to protect the vulnerable. But we also saw what is possible when determination overcomes protocol, when action triumphs over deliberation. He gestured to the scenes of reconstruction behind him. Ithora supports the proposed reforms without reservation. We have learned that safety comes not from promises but from capabilities and will. Earth demonstrated both. We believe this council can do the same, if it chooses to. The debate continued for hours, but its direction was clear. By session's end, the Comprehensive Defense Protocol had been ratified by an overwhelming majority. The integration of Earth's Special Response Force into Council defense structures would begin immediately, with joint training exercises scheduled within the month. As representatives filed out of the chamber, many now approached the human delegation not with suspicion, but with questions, proposals, offers of cooperation. The revelation that had initially horrified many, the existence of a human military force far beyond what had been acknowledged, was rapidly being recontextualized as an opportunity rather than a threat. Ambassador Reyes found herself momentarily alone as General Hale became engaged in a technical discussion with several military liaisons from other species. She took the opportunity to step away, finding a quiet alcove with a view of Crownus Prime's spectacular skyline. Her secure communicator activated with an incoming message, direct from Earth Central, the highest authority in human government. It was brief but carried the weight of history. Protocol ratified. Phase 2 complete. Authorized to initiate Phase 3. Reyes allowed herself a small smile. Phase 3. The gradual introduction of even more advanced human technologies, but this time through proper channels, with full disclosure and collaborative development. A true partnership rather than unilateral action. The galaxy had been shocked by what humans could do, what they had kept hidden. That shock had created an opening for change. Change that might eventually save far more worlds than just Ithora. From her vantage point, Reyes could see representatives of dozens of species engaged in animated conversations, forming connections that would have seemed unlikely just weeks before. The distress signal from a small agricultural world had set in motion events that were reshaping galactic politics. 6 months later, Tari Kiran stood on the observation deck of the newly constructed Ithora Memorial Center. Through the transparent dome, she could see stars beginning to appear in the evening sky. Beside her stood Captain, now Colonel, Reed, returned to Ithora for the dedication ceremony. "It's remarkable how much has been rebuilt," Reed observed, surveying the cityscape below. Where once there had been rubble and destruction, new structures now rose, some following traditional Ithran designs, others incorporating elements of Earth architecture and technology, creating something entirely new. "We had help," Tari acknowledged. "More than I expected, honestly. Once the Council committed to our recovery, resources flowed in from dozens of worlds." Reed nodded. Public opinion can be a powerful motivator. When footage of the Horda attack and the rescue operation spread through the galactic networks, it changed the conversation. Suddenly, abstract policy debates had faces and names attached to them. They watched as a Council peacekeeping vessel passed overhead, part of the permanent defensive force now stationed in Ithran space. Following the reformed protocols, the crew was mixed. Representatives from 7 different species working together, using integrated technology systems that combine the best aspects of each world's military development. "The liaison office is working well?" Reed inquired, though he already knew the answer from official reports. "Better than expected," Tari confirmed. "We've handled 3 potential crises in neighboring systems without needing to deploy combat forces. Sometimes, just knowing the response capability exists is enough to deter aggression." She led him to a different section of the observation deck, where a memorial wall displayed the names of those lost in the attack. Thousands of Ithrans whose lives had been cut short. Among them were many of Tari's colleagues from the security force who had fought to the end, trying to protect their people. "We still don't know why they came," she said quietly. "The Horda. They've refused all attempts at negotiation since being returned to their territory. Some questions don't have satisfying answers," Reed replied. "But intelligence suggests they were testing boundaries, seeing how the Council would respond to aggression against a minor world." "They got their answer," Tari noted with grim satisfaction. "They did, and so did others who might have been considering similar moves." Reed's expression turned thoughtful. "The Morali Empire has scaled back operations along the rim. The Sark Collective has suddenly become interested in diplomatic relations. Turns out, the prospect of facing an integrated defense force with Earth technology makes many potential aggressors reconsider their options." Beyond the memorial wall was a new addition to the center, a museum exhibition showing artifact from the battle and the rescue operation. Most prominent was a display case containing one of the photon beacons, the desperate emergency device that had started everything. A distress signal was sent, Tari murmured, reading the inscription beneath the beacon. "And what arrived changed the galaxy forever." "For the better, I hope," Reed said. Tari thought about everything that had happened since that desperate day. The lives saved, the new alliances formed, the fundamental shift in how the Council approached its responsibilities to member worlds. "I believe it has," she said finally, "though I suspect the change is just beginning." They turned away from the memorial, moving toward the center's main hall, where representatives from across the galaxy had gathered to commemorate both tragedy and rescue, remembrance and hope. Among them were Council officials, military personnel, and ordinary citizens from dozens of worlds, united not by crisis now, but by a shared vision of a more secure future. The distress signal sent from a small agricultural world had brought more than just an unexpected rescue force. It had revealed truths that had been hidden, challenged assumptions that had gone unquestioned, and ultimately horrified a galaxy not with destruction, but with the possibility of something better, if they were brave enough to embrace it. As night fell completely over Ithora, the stars shone brighter than ever before.